So thanks everybody for joining. We'll get going in just a second, I guess we'll let everybody on the call introduce themselves, both the audience and the crew on screen here. If you've been to any of our webinars before, you'll know that we like them to be rowdy. We like people to participate, to jump onto the chat, to give feedback, to ask questions, to agree or disagree with the speakers. It makes it much more interesting for us, and hopefully makes it more interesting for you as well if you are engaged and joining in. So do not be shy. Right, the reason I get everybody to introduce yourselves is so that you get the chat window open and it's there ready for when you jump on there. So my name's Stuart Easton from Transparent Choice. We've got David Dunning and Dan Dures who will introduce themselves in a second. But what we're going to do today is have something a little bit special, looking at sort of business integrated governance. So you've probably seen in the invitation and so on the little acronym BIG, Business Integrated Governance. This is a concept that David's kind of championed and whipped into life through an effort of sheer willpower, I have to say, David. He's been ruthlessly whipping a whole bunch of us to get us to contribute and to help build. And just last week, the week before, we actually physically got our hands on a copy of the Big Book. There it is, the Big Book, the Body of Knowledge. And there you go, Dan's got his out as well. So we thought we would celebrate the launch of the Big Book with this webinar. So with that, my job here today is really just to make fun of everybody else. So it's an easy one for me. So with that, Dan, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll do a little bit of a Bridget Jones moment here. I'll introduce you, you introduce David.
Fabulous. There you go. We've got a slide and everything. But so I'm Dan. I look after customer success, partners and things here at Transparent Choice. Occasionally write the odd blog, appear on the odd webinar, and generally make a nuisance of myself. So yeah, I'll be here to help, I guess, show how prioritization can kind of slot into big. So we've tried to sort of highlight, if you like, what we think is an important common ground between what we do and what sort of framework that David's developed. Talking of which, David, why don't you introduce yourself and your framework?
Well, I'm David. The big framework, I must be clear, it's not mine. It's owned by a community interest company called the Business Integrated Governance CIC. It's been developed with inputs from over 138 people. There's a couple of contributors on the call. Pam, for example, was instrumental in us creating the product perspective on all this. So I'm leading the charge in the Business Integrated Governance community interest company that develops that knowledge. And I'm also a member of Deep Team, which is a professional services company that helps organizations make best use of it. So we've got a couple of perspectives, and I think they're two very interesting perspectives, which hopefully the material we present today will be really interesting from both those points.
Very good, David. I think you're driving for now.
Yes. Well, everyone loves a bit of motherhood and apple pie, so I guess these are some fundamental beliefs that I think will drive what we're going to discuss today. So you can agree or disagree with these things, but I think I'll just read this out. But for us, business success is based on achievement of purpose via the decomposition of purpose into operational and strategic objectives, and effective delivery against business as usual change and value creation. So that's pretty much setting the scene quite big, Dan. I think.
I think of it as like everything, everywhere, all at once.
Yeah, we've got and your perspective of PMOs and EPMOs, Dan.
Yeah, so what we've discovered recently up in Edinburgh, chatting to people, House of PMO. Every organisation probably has a slightly different definition and a slightly different understanding of this space. But broadly, for the sake of what we're talking about today, we're seeing the PMO as sort of the owner of, if you like, the owner of best practice and delivery of value within a portfolio. So very much kind of in sort of leading the charge on that side of things. And you know, for us is often the core custodian of good prioritization. And then the EPMO is more of a sort of broader role where we're seeing that connection to strategy and sort of joining all the bits together in that broader governance role. So yeah, hopefully many of you will relate to the different levels. Feel free to challenge us in terms of the definitions. And ultimately, yeah, we hope everyone is gunning towards the EPMO level in terms of the
and this is more just kind of so we've all got the same terminology, right? I mean, there are so many different flavors of PMO and definitions and all the rest of it. So this is just so we're all working from the same definition for today, I guess.
Yeah, I think the big guys, you talk about sort of support functions as a sort of nice neutral term that wraps up everyone who could be all these different kind of acronyms.
Business support, you can offend everyone as opposed to just one or two perspectives. But yeah, we're using these general terms just to discuss today. But I think the thing is, if business success is based on achievement of blah blah blah, and we see PMOs and EPMOs as instrumental in enabling that to happen, we must also agree that we need prioritization to be effective. If we can't prioritize, we can't deliver. We'll dig into that a little bit later. But if we're going to prioritize, then we need to be systematic. We're not going to prioritize out of thin air and without any coordination or organization. So our proposition is that if you're going to prioritize and you're going to do it systematically, then we need to be we need to have an operating model that's going to frame how we can do that. So that's the big motherhood and apple pie statement before we get going. Anything to add, Stuart, Dan?
No, it's brilliant. I mean, it's a very simple concept, and it's one that we rattle on about time and time again. Yeah, just don't get me started, David, because you won't stop me.
Okay. Well, if this doesn't work, it's not just that someone won't get a bonus. It means that organizations don't fulfill their purpose. So it has big rewards and consequences. So then, what is this big thing? I'm not going to bore everyone to death. We're going to go through the big thing as well as everything else today. So we'll try and tell this as a sort of a story. We'll introduce big as a framework to help you get from purpose to strategic objectives to effective delivery. I'll introduce then the place of a PMO within big. Dan will then show you quite a bit more. Do you want to signpost a little bit of that, Dan?
Yeah, so we'll talk about the I guess prioritization in the PMO and introduce what we think the kind of the fundamentals are in terms of, you know, really good core operations, and then we'll start to look to the horizons and see what we think. You know, imagine the kind of the future as it could be with everything connected with the right sort of systematic approach to value generation.
We'll ask you guys. So what's stopping effective prioritization, if it is indeed stopping effective prioritization? What is stopping you? And we'll use Slido for that. Slido.com you can get up on your phone. I don't know if you've used those sorts of things before, but we'll have a little poll on Slido, and we'll give you a Slido code to tap in. So you can just tap in your thoughts, and we'll capture some thoughts live and comment on them as they come in. And we'll do a couple of those little polls if that's okay with everyone. It's good to see what folks are thinking. We'll then introduce where an EPMO can add value. We'll ask you guys what you'd like an EPMO to do, and offer you how an EPMO, if we do continue to call it that, will offer you what that can do within business integrated governance, and wrap that up with some calls to action, links to stuff, and proposal for next steps. So that's where we are. Shall I just dive in, Dan?
Let's go.
So then, what's big? Business integrated governance. We've just said in the definition earlier, it's an operating model to enable connection to enable connection from purpose to strategy to delivery and back again. We can visualize it. Business integrated governance is a set of cogs, a lot of cogs for delivery and governance, all happening at once within our organization. And if we're not careful, those cogs misalign, they grate, they don't work. And the proposition is that if we can smooth our governance operations, then we can more reliably and effectively deliver our purpose in all shapes and sizes of what that means. So if we're going to take a catchphrase away about big, it's getting the organization governance cogs to work together to achieve purpose. And there's a link to the body of knowledge there, and we'll repeat this link later, but it's free. You can be a member. It's no charge. It's as I say, delivered by a community interest company. You can feast on it at your leisure. But having introduced that high-level concept, what does it then mean to the PMO? Well, if we're going to operate business integrated governance, we're going to have some components in place. We're going to have an effective organization where there's clear structure, there are clear roles, there's some corporate process that works. We're going to have effective governance. We're going to be able to make decisions. We're going to be able to manage compliance. We're going to need information and data to enable that to happen. We're going to need to hold people accountable and have accountability within our culture. To make it happen, we're going to need effective business support, which of course PMO fits in there. We'll need effective assurance to make sure we're doing the right things the right way, and leadership to enable us to get this going and to help us sustain it and to keep it embedded within our organization. So those are the big components. Again, I can explain more on a different date in some more detail. But with a PMO perspective, well, if a PMO enables achievement of business objectives, as we discussed earlier, then there are a number of huge contributions a PMO will provide. It'll be providing the project governance. It'll be providing lots of information to internal and external stakeholders. It'll be supporting people to be accountable. It'll be carrying out a service level to make this work. So the PMOs already are providing a chunky aspect to what integrated governance can be. But there are trickier bits that maybe a PMO will find it less easy to carry out, less easy to perhaps carry out independent assurance. Perhaps simply because of its place in the organization, its visibility in the organization, or perhaps even because it can't so easily access information that's outside its domain. It might well have a leadership that is senior and respected, but perhaps not quite at the level in the organization where it can be most effective. We might also find that a PMO doesn't necessarily have access and integration to all of our corporate data sources. I've worked with many PMOs that have had to collate their own data and had to gather information and pull it together and not truly been integrated like other core business functions. And I hear many people complain or worry about their remit and responsibility, and I hear many PMOs offering to explain to their business what the PMO does and what services it offers. I find it really curious that's necessary if a PMO is well embedded, understood, and has clear remit and role within an organization. So I think we can help a PMO carry out its duties very effectively, and I think we can make it bigger and better, if you'll excuse the pun, if we can plug it in with big.
So David, can I ask a really I'm going to be the one who asks the stupid question that nobody else dare, and actually it's not really me asking it. I had a conversation with someone who is very, very experienced in this kind of area earlier today. Told them we were going to do this webinar about business integrated governance, and they understood what business meant, they understood what integrated meant, but they were a little puzzled about this term governance and what it really means. So in this context, right, you've drawn this beautiful wheel. What does governance actually mean in in this context?
Decision making, compliance management. So governance is what helps us carry out our accountability. It helps us make decisions, helps us set the policy and the recipe with which we do business. So governance of a project, for example, is compliance with respect to how it works. It's compliance with respect to business case. It's decision making around it. So governance is all about getting the acceptance of objectives, the acceptance of responsibility for getting them carried out, the acceptance of explaining to the business how progress is happening, and for somebody to stand up and say, that's my job, I'm going to take responsibility and be accountable for that. Differentiating between governance and accountability. Governance is about governance is about accepting accountability, and management is about executing responsibility. So we can definitely distinguish between responsibility and accountability. The book covers all this stuff in quite some depth. There's this big chapter on what governance is and what it means in this context. Governance itself and what governance bodies are. There's quite a bit to chew through. But if we think of it as the framework within which decisions are made, and the process, the orchestration of that decision-making process, all those decision-making processes, then we've summed it up.
Beautiful, thank you.
So if we've got we're in good shape with respect to what we can do with the PMO already, what else can having an integrated framework within which the PMO sits, how can it help the PMO? Well, if you have an integrated framework within which the PMO sits, then the idea is that remit and responsibility are quite clear, that the business understands what we do because it's defined as part of how the business works. How we fit with corporate governance isn't something we have to explore. It's defined. It's part of the integrated governance approach. So those are two key things that will help PMO function straight away. Tactical things. If a PMO has defined its own information sources and compiled its own tools, then with an integrated approach to governance, there's greater focus on sharing data and justifying bigger and better tools. So we should find it less difficult to gather and manage information. With respect to leadership and accountability, we can lift up the level of leadership perhaps that we have for a PMO, because it's a more corporate and integrated business service. It's not something that's for a particular program or a particular area of the business. It's now got a senior pivot point within the organization, and if it's charged with supporting people discharge their accountability, the people will be much more grateful to receive support if they're accountable than if they're not. That's certainly a quote I've had back to me a few times. And what it means is that we can be clearer about the service level that we provide, and we can change our PMO from perhaps being a support office to being a fully fledged business function that's alongside the other key business functions that we have in our organization. So for some, it might just up the visibility and up the profile and up the resourcing and leadership level that they are subjected to day to day. So I think there's some real benefits of big as a concept to promoting and plugging in PMO more significantly. But moving on to our subject of prioritization, for example, if in most scenarios our PMOs support the prioritization of projects. In most scenarios, they're looking to compile information for project prioritization, looking to oversee and support fair accountability because projects have been prioritized correctly. And another comment here: if we can't prioritize, how can we manage accountability? If you don't have accountability established, perhaps strategic planning is pretty pointless, because we can plan all we like, but we're not holding people to account. It's pointless, some would argue. And I guess our PMOs assist in the readiness for prioritization, and we'll be able to ask the questions, are we prioritizing the right projects? So a PMO is already doing lots of big stuff, but there are things that it may find difficult to without a big context. There's lots of benefits for a PMO as being part of business support in a big context, and certainly prioritization is a key big facet that we need to enable a PMO to support more effectively. So this is when I think we move on to Dan's piece, where we talk about prioritization. Is that about now?
I think so. Have I got control, David, or am I going to do the magic eye movement every time I want to do a build?
Or just I failed to work out how to give you remote control, so just give me a thumbs up or shout at me or something. There you go.
Just do the builds in comedy style. I'll kind of surf along with them and just catch up as you do them. So look, the prioritization, let's be clear, it's not rocket science. We're going to talk about 3 basic steps that can deliver prioritization. And again, this is our sort of we think every PMO should be doing this, frankly, and this should just be a basic function of the PMO. To David's point, if you can see it in the context of big, it will increase the probability of it succeeding, and hopefully push and open doors. So we're going to sort of, alongside, what the context David's given us, we'll just look at some levers for how we do it. And I was thinking about doing a live demo, then I decided that a live demo with Slidos and everything else would just invite disaster. So we're just going to do kind of regular screenshot type approach. So I would say, if you like the look of it, Stuart and I will probably be doing a live demo later in the month, and join us then. So we're going to organize backlog. We're going to define value, but we're going to define value properly rather than in a way that's a bit naff. And we're going to pick the right projects. So organize, define, pick. Hit it, David.
I am trying to click it. There we go.
So, can software really deliver uniformity in a diverse organizational culture? Can we go from a situation where we've got, feline-based chaos on the left to herded cats on the right? Can we? Big fat no. No, you can't. And frankly, anyone selling software that says they can, I think, is probably suffering from optimism bias. Why? Because I don't think software alone can solve a human issue. And collaboration is predominantly, in our experience, a human collaboration issue. It's about people working together in order to come up with the right choices for the organization. So at the end of the day, there's so much subjectivity inherent in good prioritization that you need to get a system that gets people working with people in order to deliver good outcomes. And that, by the way, was partly an excuse for me to use a bit of generative AI as to what an organized group of cats look like. So use software, but obviously we can use software to create common structure. So again, this is how we approach it. So I'm going to introduce 3 kind of personas on the left here, right? And we're going to think about what prioritization means with 3 very kind of crude hats on in terms of different types of people. So we've got the finance guy. You can tell he's a finance guy because he's got a calculator. We've got the next one. Now you can tell she's the boss because she has a steely look about her and a suit. And you can tell that she is the worker because she has a high-vis jacket and a hat. So what we're doing with these groups is we can actually then provide the structure that brings requirements that they have in their areas together. And we can have a documented process. We can have transparent backlogs. We can have shared decision gates, so decisions are made with the same sort of structure and logic. We can have a live database rather than little pots of stale data hiding in Excel in different corners of the organization. We can automate data collection, so it's not kind of death by attachment and in Outlook. And we can work with integrated connectivity. So we can start to make it easy to say, you know what, you guys like Jira, you guys like Excel, you guys like napkins in Starbucks. we are going to struggle to force you to use a different system or tool because you are people and you resist that kind of uniformity. But we can bring together your different outputs and put them into one place in order to enable us to prioritize properly across these different bits of the organization. So what does that mean? How do we do it? We start by collecting projects. So, we can do, sometimes we do kind of request forms where you can really share the ability to ask for projects and ideate broadly across the organization. Sometimes we'll connect to another system. Sometimes we'll bring stuff in from Excel. The idea is that the software should be flexible to the organization. The stage gating is, again, flexible to the organization. So the idea is you focus on the decision and the outcomes, and you have transparency and a lack of ambiguity. So many places are never quite sure if something funded, not funded, what's the status, what's the stage, where are we with that data versus that data. So just having a bit of structure and clarity is, via, in this case, a Kanban, is we think a really valuable support. And thirdly, signals, David, there we go, defining resource. So again, if you want to be able to be flexible and agile in how you allocate resource, it's important to get in early in the process and have common definitions. So you can actually understand who wants what, as in parallel, you work out who should get what based on the value that they're going to deliver the organization. So just a bit of common structure enables much, much better collaboration through the process.
And that's a really important point there, Dan, because we might prioritize, but what are we prioritizing for? It's to deploy resources, funds, and leadership, I guess. So the resources bit is crucial.
Exactly. And this is where, a framework like BIG and just a conscious deployment where you're trying to do this on purpose is really useful, because you don't have to get everyone using the same PPM tool. We know that takes years and half the time doesn't work. This is about saying, right, we just need a little bit of structure to bring us together. So the second point we want to talk about was value creation and how different definitions of value are massively divisive within an organization. So I'm going to go back to my simple stereotypes for this piece. Now, here's finance guy, if you remember, spot the calculator. And he's probably looking at predictable modeling data. He thinks cost savings are fantastic. He thinks revenue growth is pretty good as well, although a bit shakier. But he can put stuff in his Excel model, point to a number, generate an ROI, and know that the project is good because the finance data says so. That's his point of view. Let's go back to our steely-eyed leader. Now, she's looking at her hard-to-quantify strategic objectives, the big picture stuff. She could kind of come up with a business case for it, but there'd be a lot of assumptions in there. Or maybe it's the really impossible to quantify stuff like the ESG agenda, and delivering some of those stakeholder commitments. They're important, they're her perspective. Or we can go to the other extreme, go to the front line. They're in the front line, they see they see reducing the risk of things breaking. They know that machine's on its last legs and needs fixing. The front line is if you get it right, comes up with some fantastic ideas that are simple, common sense things, not sort of big picture, big ticket items. So there's lots of different threads here.
To be really clear, right? Sometimes we talk about this stuff as if strategic objectives and operational objectives are somehow different. They're not. They're just objectives. And so your big strategic objectives will drive operational objectives. And then within those operational units, the executives within those units will have a strategy for delivering their operational goals, right? So within that unit, those become the strategic objectives within that unit, and so on down the organization. So this conversation about strategic objectives and operational objectives, it can be a little confusing, but it's really just a matter of perspective. What's an operational objective to the strategic, to the boss with the jacket on, is going to be that's going to be an operational thing. It's going to be strategic to the person with the hard hat, right? So don't get too lost in some of the terminology here. It's just understanding that you've got business to run, business as usual, which is what I guess we really mean when we're talking about these operational things. And then there are change projects, which are about changing the way we do business. David, is that a reasonable way of describing it?
Yeah, we line of sight from the purpose we have as a business, the objectives the organisation set, through to what it is that we're going to need to do. Some of which will be change, some of which will be value creation, some of which will be operational. So we need that line of sight to connect this all up. And what's very interesting is when we can spot that a project in this domain has no strategic connection, and then that's going to, I guess, be flagged up in the prioritization process. And that's what we're trying to deal with in big, and I guess that's what prioritization helps us spot.
And Dirk's just asked the question: what does ESG stand for? It stands for egregiously sloping gato, which gato is the Spanish word for cat, and it's the name of Dan's cat because it's only got 3 legs. It is in fact egregiously sloping. So no, it's
you not know, Stuart. You're bragging.
Yeah. and Pam's asked a question about objectives and key results, OKRs. That's the way that we can cascade from our objectives through to the organisation, so that it has things it can prioritise and focus on delivery. So OKRs, if you're used to that acronym, that's the backbone and I guess ultimately the items that we prioritise of objectives and key results too.
Prioritization criteria, which we'll come on to in a second, and OKRs, I think they're probably some close cousins. We'll roll into that as we go through. So just on this perspective, right? So dude with his calculator is like, people are, bean counters never get it, right? Leadership will be like, they've got some pet project, some idea they like. Operations are like, you never understand the business. You just don't get it. You're off on doing your own thing. And what you're doing by allowing these silos to build up, and jump on the chat if you see these silos or if you think I'm speaking nonsense. But the idea about these perspectives is that people don't always understand someone else's definition of value. They can be in the same organization, they can sit next to each other in the office, but they have a different perspective on what value means for the organization. And if they don't share a perspective on what value means, they're never going to be able to prioritize beyond horse trading, which is not very productive as a way of getting things done.
Oh, let's press the right button.
So we've got our diverse perspectives now. So we've got diverse perspectives. We resolve this through, we use a system called AHP. This is a hierarchy from AHP. If you press the button again, a little snazzy build will come. There we go. So back to our personas, right? Calculator guy. He's like, right, these are my key financial metrics. And hopefully he can then explain why they're important and bring people on board with that. But actually, they need to sit alongside the strategic objectives. So we can see what matters, what are the key tenets of the strategy, what are the key high-level goals. The ESG, which, Stuart, stands for environmental, societal, and governance, I think. Basically, kind of green stuff, governance stuff, all that malarkey. And doing the right thing on a broader community basis. Obviously, every CEO is highly committed to that agenda. And then, again, over in the operational side, why my IT manager is wearing a hard hat, I'm not sure. It's obviously very dangerous code. But you've got, the idea that sometimes common sense ideas, there's some simple common sense things, or the value of fixing stuff before it breaks, the kind of maintenance agenda, which has value. It's just not necessarily the value that the finance guy thinks of, or that the strategy or the leader thinks of, but it has huge value. And anyone that's had to deal with a broken thing can appreciate that. So we're starting to deconstruct and define value in a way that opens up all those different perspectives and gives us the platform to quantify the value of different projects in a single framework. So we build our framework, and then if we roll to the next slide, we use, look at that. We do have, I forgot to say, we've got, if this is interesting space to you, we've got a free ebook. We'll send the link out after this, where you can explore how this works. It's not Again, it's not rocket science. Few principles, bit of learning we've made along the way. So have a look at that or reach out.
Remember, folks, that free download link, I've stuck it on the links at the end of the presentation. So bear that in mind, and it'll come up so you can click it later or write it down later.
Yeah, we can't click in Zoom. We're not that clever. So the way we actually then start to merge all those different perspectives is via a system called Pairwise, which does pretty much what it says on the tin. So, you can have a debate where you're literally saying, what is more important? Is it the finance metrics or the strategy metrics? And you go, well, of course, both are important. But as a group, you can then start to discuss their relative importance. You can represent one point of view, you can represent another point of view. And the little screenshot underneath is just an illustration of capturing that data where you get people to say what they think and then bringing it into one place where you can have a good, structured debate. And there's also huge value at this point, of course, in focusing on what drives value. Remember, we're defining what is valuable to us. We're not looking at projects. So once you get into projects, you're getting into horse trading. You're getting into rabbit holes about specific bits of functionality. This is a little bit more esoteric, a little bit more theoretical. Why are we here? Why do we do projects? Why do we do BAU? Why do we spend money? Let's have a debate and learn from each other. So the stuff you get at the top is effectively a nice normalized scoring framework. So hopefully you can see you've got the platform for scoring projects. But critically on the right, what you're seeing is a debate. So it's important we balance hard and soft goals. Oh, yeah, it is. Okay, so those strategic goals versus the financial goals, we can start to understand they both have importance, but we can decide which is more important to us now as an organization. We can start to understand the point of view of that person sitting next to us in the office, who before we thought was just a sort of, bean counter who just didn't get it. And then I think for a final build there, you're starting to have a debate we should have had before. And we hear this from clients. It's just ripped off of a quote from a client. This is the debate we should have had years ago, because we go round and round in circles. But until we have this debate, we don't sort anything out. Because fundamentally, if you've got disagreements at this level, ignoring them doesn't make them go away. It just pushes the debate out into endless cycles of meetings where you never get anything done, because you have fundamentally different beliefs about what defines value.
And this is, going right back to David's first slide, right? And I'll read out that first bullet point of the whole presentation again, just for a second, right? So business success is based on achievement of purpose. Okay, that's the very first bit of the first bullet point, achievement of purpose. This is us getting agreement on what that purpose is, how we can measure purpose. And so that is the absolute foundation for everything else that follows, right? So this is, we belabor this. We spend a lot of time thinking about how to make this process better, slicker, more compelling. And the reason is because this is the foundation for everything that you do to deliver both operational change and transformational change within organizations.
There's just a comment from Nicole about maturity. So personally, I don't think you need to be, from an organizational point of view, hugely mature. I think where you need maturity is in a leadership perspective. So the alternative to doing this, arguably, is just the boss says what they want, they shout, and they get it. It's mature, exactly. It's maturity behavior. You need the person who's in charge to go, do you know what? I know that I'm probably not right all the time because I'm a person, I'm human. And there's knowledge around me that can really help me make a better decision. So I think the best leaders, the mature leaders, are the ones that can recognize that they don't necessarily have all the answers in their head, and that syndicating that decision-making process through the experts actually produces a better result.
And I think it is important to draw a difference between the process maturity, because we've seen customers that have deployed our software that have gone from the very lowest level of maturity, total chaos, to a really high level of maturity in a couple of months deploying the software, right? But we've also seen customers where, their processes have all been very mature, but the supposed adults in the room have behaved like toddlers, right? And they've really struggled. So you're absolutely right. It's about the, I come back to that first sentence, David, that you had on the first slide. It's about an acceptance amongst the leadership team that the whole point, that business success is based on achievement of purpose, right? That's the first few words of the bullet point, right? And so if there is buy-in to that statement, then this process can work. If there's no buy-in to that, you're going to have it's going to be difficult to make big or anything else stick, right? So you need some buy-in to that statement first.
But I think I think I need to shut up and let Dan go on. But for maturity for me isn't a barrier. It's what you need to achieve so that you can carry out the capabilities that you need to carry out. So for me, maturity is just a measure. And if we need to be more capable because we need to do more sophisticated things, then we need to develop the maturity. But I don't see maturity as something which we have to leap. It is something we need to develop. That's just my viewpoint.
Yep. Brilliant.
Next slide, please.
What a concept. That's a new concept for me, by the way, David, is letting Dan get on with it.
I forgot you were joining us, Stuart. Otherwise, I put this in for an hour and a half. So, automate targeted data capture. So, again, this is how you score projects. So we've built our framework. We can actually now start to pull the lever and see the results, right? So the point is, you can actually get experts, not necessarily project owner, not necessarily all the same person. You can get the people who know most about projects to give you feedback in a structured way as to how useful they are. There's a bit of data science in here in terms of like nice sort of Likert scale, bit of technology for targeting, all good, all good. Press the button one more time. We are on double speed now. And you get this. Now, I like this because we see this for real all the time. If you work as a team, you will reduce noise. Noise being like one person on their own will make stupid decisions. Read a book by Dan Kahneman if you want to go further into that. We'll just bias, because one person who has skin in the game isn't necessarily going to be the best judge of value. You'll reduce gaming, likewise. Similarly, people kind of thinking, I'll just put a high mark on this, and I'm not accountable for what happens later, so I'll just get the resource and then haha. Or stupid. Again, we all have moments when we put stupid data into the spreadsheet. If there are 4 of us, we are less likely to be stupid. And if we then work together as a group to understand outliers, we can flatten those mistakes and come up with a better data point as a group. So, and like any process, prioritization, garbage in, garbage out. So this is how you stop putting garbage in. And if you've got a spreadsheet with like one person putting in data, chances are you've got a lot of garbage in there.
Indeed.
Next slide, please.
We're nearly at the Slido, aren't we? Nearly, not quite.
We're getting there. Right, so good data needs buy-in. Right, so we, in the software, will produce a prioritization matrix, right? You probably all produce one in Excel or on a whiteboard or something at some point, right? But the point is that definition around project value is something you've worked together to build. You've listened to each other, you've worked together, you've been systematic about how you get the best data from the experts. Therefore, you have that critical second ingredient of buy-in. People know the data is good. And with that, we can then move on to picking projects. So we put the data into a nice, call it efficient frontier, and effectively you can then pick the best value projects based on resource constraints. So you can start to say, this is my portfolio. There's a little bit more to it than this, but this is my portfolio based on the resource I have that delivers the most value. So you've got a real fact-based, data-led process that's rational, fair, and gets the answer more or less right. And in terms of time saving, you're also now starting to save time and benefit, because you're not going to spend your time doing U-turns, having meetings about meetings, and trying to backtrack because nobody agreed on the value definition. And critically, we've now got our 3 bods here, building collective commitment, collective accountability against the choices they've made, against the choices they've not made. So there's clarity as you move into execution to say who's got the resource, who hasn't got the resource, who's accountable for delivering value, who's accountable for making do with what they've got.
Database decisions, less politicking. What more could you want?
Absolutely. Just a really, really quick thing before we leave this slide, if I may. Sorry, I'm going to derail everything again, David. But the prioritization matrix that Dan's got there, if you Google project prioritization, or ask ChatGPT what methods you could use to prioritize projects, you will find prioritization matrix as a way of prioritizing projects. And I have to tell you here and now, it isn't. Prioritization matrix is a visualization. That's all it is. It's a visualization tool. It doesn't help you prioritize anything. Prioritization is figuring out where projects go on the vertical axis, right? The value axis. That's the prioritization process. And so just having a chart isn't enough. It's the process for putting the dots in the right place on the chart that is the prioritization. So please, 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 when you're out there Googling, looking how to do things like project prioritization, don't necessarily believe what you see. There's a whole body of knowledge and research into how to do this right. And most articles that you find on prioritization, at least online, really are incomplete at worst, at best, excuse me, but just plain wrong in many, many cases, right? So when when you see things like prioritization matrix, remember that's just a visualization. Behind that, it's the process of putting the dots, how you put the dots, how you calculate where the dots go on the chart that delivers that buy-in. And it's the buy-in actually that is the important bit. Right? The data is just a number, right? But it's buy-in to that number that matters. That's what lets you make good decisions quickly. David, I'm going to shut my mouth now. For about the next 10 seconds anyway.
I'm biting my tongue. I've answered a question Terry's raised in the chat. We just don't have time to delve into it. We'll come back to it at the end, Terry, if that's okay. But I recognise your point.
Let's hit the next slide, and then I think we're into the Slido after that. So, and quickly look. So the point is, I think it's important to understand we are giving the organisation the right to say no. David pulled me up earlier and this says it's not the PMO necessarily saying no, it's recommending no. But we all know that recommending no in some organisations is a real career limiting thing to do, right? But now, if you've got a process in place, no can mean no. If we do this, if we take on more projects, we're going to mess up our productivity. And if we mess up our productivity, we will deliver less. No. Because what we'll do is we'll delay our most important projects because we're putting too many projects in. If we say yes to everything, we're not going to deliver the most important things. No, because we have a robust, fair process that says so, because there are more important projects that we are going to do instead. And then no, because, arguably there are better projects for the organization, projects that deliver more value in a way that hopefully everyone can say, yeah, that's fair. We can't do everything. We will do better if we are able to focus. And I can feel empowered and engaged knowing that the right thing's being done.
Information rather than emotion-based decision-making.
Yes.
So let's everyone's got their phone at hand, and if you hit slido.com, we're going to ask you to just give us a few remarks, if you wouldn't mind. So what's stopping you from systematically prioritizing at the moment? Maybe you are systematically prioritizing, I don't know. Give us some comments. If you're struggling to systematically prioritize, is it because you don't have a method, you don't have a tool, there's no framework within which you can manage it? There's lack of will to be objective. People like their politicking. There's no one to champion the process. What is it? What are the barriers? What are the pain points you're facing in systematically prioritizing now? When I flip to the next slide, those of you that are generous enough to have put in comments will have put them there. So me and Dan were just going to watch them come in, but you've been so quick.
Frantically put some in ourselves. Yeah. Start reading instead of typing.
That wasn't me. I had my hands. That's really, thank you, everyone. Conflicting metrics. How do you catch the conflicting metrics? The conflicting priorities by stakeholders. These are all things to be dealt with, I guess. You guys are the experts on the prioritization piece, so remark.
And yeah, thanks for Anonymous for that third point. No, the conflicting metrics is absolutely what Power is there to do. You can't prioritize between areas if everything has its own special axes, everything is its own pot. You need to be able to create that aggregation in order to have some agility as an organization.
And that lack of priorities, conflicting priorities by stakeholders, I think that one is, I don't think I've ever seen an organization where we've walked in and that has not been the case. We've had organizations tell us that's not the case, and as soon as you start asking questions, they start arguing different points of view, right? So yeah. So that one's very astute. I like that. Whoever that anonymous was, that's bang on the money, I think.
And similarly, the lack of discussion, yeah, absolutely. If you have the default often for prioritization is the loudest voice, right? The hippo, the person in charge says, "This is what we're doing. I have decided," which usually goes wrong, particularly as you get to an organization that's of a scale. That person is simply not able to get across all the details. So they're going to end up picking the thing that's in the back of their head, the thing that they relate to from when they were, more operational, which is generally not a great idea.
And the poorly stated strategic goals is kind of the other side of the same coin of not having, of different priorities from different stakeholders. If those goals were clear and it was beautifully laid out, as David's first slide implied it should be, then you wouldn't have that problem. But again, just about every organization we deal with has this challenge to a greater or lesser degree.
Yeah, and we find sometimes building criteria is a case of, making the best you can with some interviews and some sort of bits of presentation. And sometimes it's a case of going, oh, we've got a very good structure, we can just put it in the right format. So yeah, different PMOs have different levels of strategic kind of quality to deal with.
And that last answer captures, so we've got a little list of the top 10 pain points around prioritization, signs you need prioritization. And we trot these out at all the trade shows and have people kind of tick them off and doing a straw poll. And this answer at the top of the screen right now, that's hit a whole bunch of them, right, Dan? We've got
that's pretty
priority number one. We've got big projects stealing resources. We've got the loudest voice, right? The political sponsors banging his feet and saying, "Give it to me," right? You got everything going on in that one. So whoever you are, please go to our website, fill in a form.
Honestly,
tell us. We need to talk.
I know we should probably get on with the presentation, but this is fascinating. But it's interesting that execs will observe the problem that we need better prioritization, and then fail to recognize that they are in fact part of that problem, because they're the one setting all sorts of chaos going on by interfering, and frankly by not having a proper governance process. And this is why we like talking to David, right? This is the governance structure is actually what starts to control this kind of rogue behavior, and hopefully as an industry we can kind of grow up a bit and be a bit more data led rather than like crazy COO led. Terry's getting a bit worried about resources and where are resources in this whole discussion. So Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about resources and where they come in? Yeah, look, I think I sort of flashed them up at the beginning and then decided to sort of control myself about going down too many rabbit holes. So resources, you can, in a way, it's you can do estimates a little bit like you do value. You can sort of ask people what they think, and a bunch of wet fingers is better than one wet finger in terms of estimates. You can build detailed models and put that data in. Everyone has different maturity depending on what stage they're doing prioritization. So yeah, you either get the data you've got or you estimate the data you don't have. The key point is there's no point in ranking projects if you've got no sense of scale. So you just have to be able to differentiate, the monsters from the tiddlers, because the tiddlers are not going to deliver as much value as the monsters, but that doesn't mean you should just do massive projects. And I think we all see sometimes, a bit of like project constipation where you sort of get blocked up trying to only do big things, but you need a little bit of that kind of velocity that comes from just delivering smaller quick wins.
This is a big discussion. So when we're prioritizing, we're not just coming up with a score. We need to understand a rough idea of resource demand, cost demand, leadership time. We also need to understand risk. So we're flipping through it, but I guess we need to offer folks a more detailed deep dive. And maybe we'll in the follow-up blog that we write, we'll signpost how the resource, funds, leadership, time, and risk also come into the prioritization process. So not trying to avoid the subject, just got other stuff to ping into. But folks, thanks very much for making these notes. We'll record them and pass them on. Keep tapping away if you want to, but we're going to answer some of these things, because some of these things are about strategic goals, and that's where I think we're going with the EPMO. So for some, EPMO. So at the start of our session, EPMO said to enable definition and balancing of business objectives. Well, that's a nice definition that we stated at the start, but many others don't have that as their definition for an EPMO. Some people see an EPMO as the focal point for project management within across the enterprise. Some people see it as the focal point for doing big projects, but clearly we believe that the EPMO can do something else. And we've kind of run out a little bit of time now to ask you about what it is that do you have an EPMO, or what it could do that it's not. We just run out of time to pick up on that. But this was just basically setting up the presentation to and please do, if you want to make some notes and add comments, please chip in. The poll will be open. But we're going to then move on to say, well, what else can the EPMO do beyond be a big PMO, or be a place where project management is focused for the organization? And it all revolves around several things. It's the relation to strategy. So those of you that have been looking at some of the big stuff will see that as an organization at the very highest levels, will be an organization will have a current state. It'll have opportunities and threats that hit it. It'll have imperatives from regulation, the shareholders' expectations. There's a pathway and a strategic process that processes all of the drivers we have as a business, comes up with a vision and a strategic plan, and breaks that down into objectives and related key results, OKRs as Pam asked, that we can then cascade into the business. So if this strategic process isn't functioning, then it's very difficult to prioritize our projects, because we don't have that strategic basis to aim for. So this is a possible area that our EPMO can get into, or if it's already occupied, to not get into, but to connect with more effectively. So purpose, place of the EPMO and big, to look after the pathway from purpose to strategy. And another candidate area, strategy to delivery. So we've talked about the process, the strategic process. How do we get strategy into the business? How do we take those objectives, prioritize them, deploy our funds and leadership time between those threads of activity to achieve our strategy? So remember, strategy isn't just about change. Strategy is about developing products. It's about our business performing as well as change happening. So how do we get resources deployed effectively between these different threads? And again, this is a strategy implementation, as we're calling it. This is a candidate area that an EPMO can step into. Maybe folks have this covered already, I don't know. And just firing on. I realise we're over time and people may need to go, but I'll just finish this point, because it'll be in the recording. And in addition to the strategic process, in addition to the implementation approach, we'll need to rebalance and re-steer as time goes on. Prioritization isn't a one-off exercise. We're going to have to keep on top of this. So it is an opportunity for our EPMO to help organize the balance and choice making between things in change world, things in project, things in business as usual world, and things in value creation space. This is certainly an opportunity for an EPMO to step beyond its project limitations to connect and orchestrate decision making across all of these different priorities. So big discussions. Dan, I think this goes back to you now, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, so you know, EPMO takes you into a new space, right? So we've got a spaceman. So we've sort of gone from, you know, we're now heading into strategy development, implementation, delivery. And yeah, actually, you might start to push out towards other teams that do this. And to some extent, the key point is you've got a successful function that owns this space, whether it's the EPMO, whether it's a change management office or a strategy office, doesn't particularly matter what it's called. But the key point is if you don't have this function, you'll probably struggle to reach that next level of competence in terms of that kind of governance framework and the prioritization that flows through it.
And those issues about not knowing what the strategy is to connect my projects to will persist.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you know, the strategy will be sufficient, won't be well defined enough to be useful in terms of prioritization. So we'll whistle through the last couple, I think.
Is the idea of that picture that if you don't do your strategy definition, you don't get to where you're going, because the guy thinks he's on the moon, but if you look in the background, the moon's still up there.
Very good. Very good.
Anyway, sorry. The reason this run over, by the way, folks, is because I joined the call, so my apologies. It's always my fault. I get the blame anyway.
Okay, right. It's all good. It's all good. Let's. It's been a good debate, and you know, the last slides are a bit weak anyway. No, they're not. They're great. So let's hit it. Right. So now just let it build, David. We're good. Now this is a little bit from our kind of point of view. This is where we're heading, as you know, in terms of software, in terms of how we think we need to support the market. So we've talked a lot about prioritization, and typically often it's in a growth portfolio or a defined portfolio. You're prioritizing what needs to be done in order to deliver better value, and there's huge value in that, and lots of organizations can benefit from it. So we're happy that today works, but actually, if we think of this tangentially, maybe we need to be a bit more prioritization driven in BAU and maintenance stuff. We can spin into change and transformation, the big stuff as well. So we need to sort of go vertical and think of prioritization as being something that exists everywhere, not just in a portfolio. Next, we talk about the portfolio of portfolios. We actually need the ability to put these different backlogs side by side in order to make good, agile decisions about where we're going to place our bets. If you've got huge swathes of resource locked in BAU, that's kind of a blob, then you've not got control. Your leadership don't have control of the organization because they can't make decisions about where they want to put their resource. So portfolio is the idea that you can then have that kind of quantified visibility at a higher level. Next level, we talk about value-led scenarios. So again, as a service, what do we think the execs want? Do they want to see loads of charts and detail? No. They want to know can they have a P&L that delivers their objectives over 5 years? Can they have reassurance that their strategic plan will be met if everything goes according to plan? And of course, that the plan underneath is reliable and deliverable and credible. So it's like, actually, we're not just slapping ourselves on the back and saying, great plan, knowing that it's a pile of horse manure. We know that it's a good plan, reliable plan, and what it will deliver. And we're giving execs the choice of how to do it. And finally, top of our pyramid for now, where we want to get to, probably sort of back end of next year, is the ability to then turn value that we've talked about into a live data point, similar to OKRs really, that then flows through the project. So the point is, you can't just say, yes, that's a valuable project, it's great, tick, tick, tick. Because we want to hold people to account for that projection of value through the delivery cycle of the project. And if that value doesn't materialize, people are held to account. If that value doesn't materialize, we can stop. Because actually, you know, things change and we need that kind of responsiveness. And finally, I think on my slides, just build it up. Right, so again, how do we maybe see this kind of PMO, EPMO sort of division? So, you know, as a PMO, we should be taking the criteria across different silos, getting people to work together, and relating that to the backlog and creating value and choice based on that data. And that's, that, again, huge progress, probably kind of 99% of organizations out there. EPMO goes up a step again, where we say, actually, we need to understand the impact those projects are having on the organization in the context of market behavior, in the context of dumb luck, how things kind of work out, because actually the outcomes are going to be related to the backlog, and it's a success, but it's not a one-to-one relationship. And actually then owning the outcome for the P&L, the non-financial KPIs, all that good stuff that pops out at the end, and then how that relates back to those choices we made at the beginning is where we see that EPMO connection. And it's really being not in charge of it, that's someone else's job, right? That's the exec's job, but it's being that support function that's going to make a data-led process, a data-led connection between where you put your bets and where you get your returns.
And the big spin here is do you grow up or expand your EPMO from being something that oversees the projects to also having a greater connectivity with the strategic pipeline, with the product portfolio, and your BAU workloads, and help prioritize across not just the project portfolios, but the other workloads that you have as well.
Mm. And to some extent, you know, if you can prove it works in the project space, hopefully that the execs will kind of bite and realize, hey, I want that across more areas, because actually that ability to control and that ability to make choices is, you know, hopefully the basis of their success.
So we covered through a lot. What have we covered today? Well, we've offered you the vision that purpose, strategic objectives, and effective delivery is what defines us as a business. We've offered you the big framework, which essentially enables you to connect all those things up. We've explained how important we feel PMO is in the context of big, to certainly help us deliver projects, and we've suggested how PMO can benefit from being in a big context as opposed to fighting for itself on its own within the org. We've introduced prioritization and the capabilities that Dan's described. We can systemize and lift up prioritization from a simplistic scoring to a more sophisticated discussion and business enabling process. We asked what's stopping you, and we took a whole bunch of things there that we'll summarize and play back to you. We're going to ask you about what your EPMO did, or whether what it could do for you. And instead of asking you, we then said, well, you could do this, and talked about the strategic process, the strategy implementation process, and the ongoing balance of BAU, change, and products. And Dan's latterly wrapped up with the showing how PMO and EPMO sit alongside, and how immediate term value can emerge from those two bodies.
And like most things, I think with whether it's big or prioritization, hopefully we're starting to give you a sense of there is a ton of stuff out there, and a world of possibilities, and lots of opportunities to improve. And actually, don't be too intimidated by the fact there's loads, because there are some simple first steps you can make that will send you in the right direction. And you know, this can be iterative over time as you build up that value in layers, because most organizations respond to success. So if you can introduce one thing successfully, it will spread.
So we'll send you some links to the big body of knowledge, so you can consume that at your leisure. There's Deep Team. We did a session on how to promote your PMO and to grow it up with using big as the enabler to do that. The link that Dan showed to the prioritization criteria, that's there. We'll send that out too. And finally, the calls to action are essentially, if you think big can help you promote your PMO, then we're more than happy to talk to you about that. If you'd like to make a case for an EPMO or something bigger than your EPMO, we can help you make a case for that. If you'd like to have a strategy to delivery conversation, if that's not something your PMOs have got into so far, we can support that. And as Stuart and Dan have said, if you want to explore the capabilities of systematic prioritization, if you get it, if you really understand that it's a really good thing to make this systematic as opposed to a bun fight, then certainly we'll happy to have those conversations too. Anything to add, chaps? I think that's pretty much us. If you wanted another picture to look at us in a different way, there's the pictures again. There's our email addresses and websites if you'd like to have a dig. We've talked about prioritization, the PMO and the place of the EPMO, business integrated governance and business purpose. That's all, folks, as the big bunny would say. Are there any questions, Stuart, you've spotted that we haven't picked up on in the chat?
There are a couple of interesting comments that we didn't really get a chance to dig into, but I think we've answered most of them. And so, David, I just want to thank you. Dan, thank you as well for putting the effort in to pull this together. I love it when you guys take over, because normally I'm kind of ring leader for these things, and you just come at it from such a different direction to me. So I always learn a bunch of stuff, David, when you're on in particular. So thank you very much for doing that. And thank you to everybody for joining. And for those of you who stuck around to the end, well done. And for those of you who didn't and are watching it on the recording, you losers. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Take care.
Bye, guys.